Hello, hello. Welcome to Creativity-Hive's weekly program. My name is Miriam Haugen, and I'm part of the Creativity-Hive team. We help creatives learn to make impactful storytelling videos through one-on-one teaching and live group coaching. And our weekly hangout brings people that are either working in some aspect of motion media or maybe coaching people that are interested in making a career change, like our guest today. I am going to bring on Rosalind. Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Hello, Miriam. So nice to be here.
So, Rosalind, you are a career coach.
hmm
Would that be how you would primarily describe yourself?
I would describe myself as an executive leadership and transition coach. So I help people going through life and career transitions. I find those milestones are really tough to go at it yourself. And when I started in the entertainment industry, TV, film, voiceovers decades ago, and I just didn't see a lot of people like me in my world that could help me in those transitions. So I leveraged all of that career capital. I was a professional temp for a very long time while I was waiting for my next gigs. And so that's how I got all of my corporate positions. I used to negotiate all of the time and the salary so I can go to my auditions, and it worked out really well because I did my job so well, and I was able to still go and you know pursue that passion that I had. So, and by the way, I still do my craft. I still enjoy doing that. I still do corporate commercial campaigns and children's audiobooks. So it's something that I enjoy. It's not something that I just left behind. It's just I do it when, I can.
But you were a temp in the corporate world.
Yes. Yes,
And
I
so
was
you
a
were
temp.
making all kinds of contacts. That sounds that
Correct.
and
Correct.
you were net
And oh my gosh, Miriam, acquiring so much experience
yes.
because I cannot tell you I was working like Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies, and I would go on assignment for sometimes 6 months, sometimes four, sometimes 2 weeks. And I began to gather all this experience because you do have something. And so after all those years I was just going, I think I could like leverage all of this. What am I going to do with all this? It's like having like this bag and you're going, okay, how do I unpack all that? So I just decided, okay, I had a problem, just trying to make those kinds of transitions, especially when you're creative and you have all these like corporate people and they think differently than we do as so to speak, and so it was just difficult to try and mesh those two together, but I managed somehow to do that. And so now I feel like I have all of that experience to help those other people. And because I had that experience, I think I've had like I know like 10 industries pretty well. I worked on Wall Street as well. So look at that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've worked in Europe and LA and New York and, and now in Florida. So yeah.
So, wow, working as a temp has its benefits, doesn't it? They get to try you out, you get to try them out, and you get this wide variety. You aren't stuck with um,
No,
a
that's the
company that you're going, oh boy, this is not a
Oh
good
my gosh. I can't tell you how many times you're just going, okay, when is this assignment over?
fit. Right. I can imagine. I have not done that. I have not done
Oh
that.
my gosh. And
We
I
have
would,
spent our entire adult life, my husband and I, basically being self-employed. And so I would be a terrible employee, I think, just really
oh my
awful because I'm used to calling my own shots, you know?
And again, that's like having someone, because I was just about to bring up the story about, I had one temp agency, and they called me up for this assignment, and they said, okay, well, I'm not sure how long you're going to last. And I was just going, well, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, client's a little difficult. And I went, okay, we'll see. I had enough experience at that time to handle anything that came my way. And guess what? I handled it beautifully, and I actually got the position eventually.
Uh-huh.
And I was there for a while. So, I think even having those kinds of experiences gives you the opportunity to be with other people that you're not used to.
Absolutely. Oh, that is so cool. Um, yeah, so they tried you out. They went, my gosh, this lady's phenomenal. We need to offer her a job.
Yeah, well, I ensured, especially that, um, when they knew what your kind of background was, we could have like that reputation of, oh, a little flakiness, and I'm like, oh, no, 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 we're not doing that. I made sure that whatever they wanted me to do in 8 hours, I can do in 6. And that's how I had a reputation in all of the agencies that I was signed up with. So that really created the momentum for me to continue. And all of those references that I
Right.
got along the way.
Yes. So you were signed up. Okay, now I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I'm curious. You were signed up with multiple temp agencies.
Correct. Because, being in LA and New York, it's full of companies. So I always wanted to ensure that I always had a temp assignment after either coming off an episodic, or having, or coming off of a theater gig. Sometimes the theater gigs can run, a month or 2 months or something like that. So I would go down the list of calling. I had at one point, I think I had well over 10, 15 agencies that I had the phone numbers and I was signed up with. And I never was without an assignment, ever.
Wow.
And that's if
So
you wanted to
you,
work.
yeah, so you would, let's say you were on a theater gig and you did that
Hmm.
and it ended, then would you be start calling the agencies and say I'm
Yeah,
available?
absolutely. I'd call them the week before I'd arrive from home. Yep. That's exactly how I would do it. And either check in was usually like Friday mornings or Friday, around that time before the lunchtime. And you can just call them and say, hey, I'm available for Monday. And most of the time I'd have something going on. So I never wanted to be, at the point where, oh my gosh, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing. I was always staying curious in how can I better myself somehow. And whether that was, so I had the assignment during the day, and I would go to class maybe at night, or acting class at night, or when I went back to school, I would go to class at night. So I always had something going on.
Awesome. So tell me about your coaching it looks like you do a lot of different kinds of coaching, really, but you're
Yes,
mostly with the
career.
focus. When you say executive coach,
Hmm.
you're talking about top level
C
CEOs
suites.
and that sort of thing, or the top
Correct.
executives.
Correct. And they're either in a transition of some sort. They're looking maybe for their next place. or they're looking to see if something's viable, or they're all coming in with different through different avenues. And so what I try and do is to strategize with them and see what's going to be the best option. Also, we have to look at branding, and they might have to be
Branding.
personal branding. We might have to rebrand them. They might, and some might want to, they might not want to be so much in that C-suite. They might want to just come down just a little bit because they want less responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that rebranding is going to come in. It's not leaving that behind. It's just retelling the story, so to speak. And and stories are like, that's what everybody wants to hear.
Yes. What is your story? And right, you want to tell the story that is true to you, that's authentic, but also is going to appeal to the audience. And the audience in
Correct.
this case would be that next potential employer.
Correct. And that rebranding is very, very important, because it's the point from where you're beginning again. These are all these transitions are end beginnings and endings. You're ending something and you're beginning something else. So when you're retelling your story, you have to know, yes, you are the protagonist, but now you're in a different, you're wearing something different.
So, okay, have you ever have you had have you had an opportunity to counsel somebody who was maybe in more of the tech field? Like video editor, for instance, or
Well, yes, and media, is especially because that could take a lot of forms. But when we look at, when you're looking at either transitioning or anything, and especially with media and video, technology is constantly changing. So, these are like the top three things that we could look at. And the first thing is, really get clear on the why. What is your why? What is that purpose? What are we looking at first? Is it because, we get stuck on something and you just can't pinpoint what that something is. Just like, I don't know, there's something, I don't know, missing. I'm not sure. So, if you ask the question, why making that transition is going to make your life better. So if you can answer that clearly, is it more, do you need more stability? Do you want more money? Is there something that's not challenging enough for you? So getting clear on that why, that leads into the next step. Once you get that down, you reach out to all those people, to your network, and to your network's network, because you're probably one conversation away from like your next gig, as I would say. So reaching out, as we would call them, informational interviews. They're like kind of like coffee meets.
right.
Okay. That, or even if you could get a mentor, because I have to tell you, that's a plethora of information, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that you're probably going to get. Or is it, what can you expect, or what is expected of you? What are the skills that you're going to need? And there might be information in there that once you gather all that, Miriam, you might step back and go, oh, wait a minute.
This isn't really what I want after all. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I'm sure you've had those moments in your life. You scratch your head and you go, I thought this is what I wanted, but no. So once you have all of that information and you've spoken to all these people, then you have to put some kind of action plan together. So if you put an action plan together, yes, you can have these broad goals, but you might get overwhelmed with that. And then guess what? You might not do anything because they're just so big and you can't tackle them.
Mhm.
You're not going to give a baby a full-fledged dinner, right? A
Right.
toddler, because they just can't ingest it. So we can't do that either with like these huge goals and then, expect that we're just going to, tackle them. You know, take it into small chunks, because with that you could at least, what can't be managed can't be measured. You can track your efforts, and that might give you the momentum to keep going to the next goal. So those are the things that when I begin with an executive and that really they're going from this, thing to this really different thing. Okay, now wait a second. Let's, I'd say, whoa, Nelly, okay, let's just get our whys down and let's see what we need and what we don't need.
Okay, so the three tips. One
Mhm,
is,
mhm.
what is your why? Figure that out. Two is, tell
Informational
me,
interviews,
informational interviews, networking,
mentors, networking,
mentors. Well, is
mentors.
that all combined in the number two?
Yes,
Is
you
getting
can
mentors?
combine.
Mhm.
Correct. You can combine, but I say gather the information from all these people
Right.
because, as we discussed, you might find something out that ooh doesn't it touches a
Yeah.
nerve and you're done.
Yeah. That's just my father-in-law, bless his heart. He's passed away, but he thought he wanted to be an accountant at one point.
Oh
And then
wow.
he realized that that involved sitting inside at a desk all day. And thankfully, he realized that that was not for him, that he needed to be out in the fresh air and more active. So,
And and let me just say this, being an accountant, it's a more introvert kind of uh, path. And for people that like to be outside, like to have that, connection with people, that's kind of hard to be
right.
sitting at a desk. So yeah, no, I'm glad he didn't do that.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
third tip is having the action plan.
Action plan, of course. I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. And then, of course, the fourth would be actually act on the acting action plan, right?
Exactly. But we talked about before we came on, about passion, and as creatives, we have a passion to either tell the story through video or media or theater or audiobooks or there's so many ways to tell that story or writing, and we we just we end up going, well, sometimes passion doesn't pay the bills. We have to be
Right.
realistic. And so what I say to my clients is that we got to get to that first. Okay, if that is a huge issue, you have to attend to that. You can't ignore the financial aspect of it. And those steps that you do, the three tips, you can do that when you're not under pressure. Like you don't have to be financially trying to save the money, and you could do this anytime, so you're not putting so much pressure on yourself. So when we talk about that passion is staying curious, because I have to tell you, I had a passion for my craft. I was a child actor and I went all the way through, loved I loved every minute of it. And I had, a scholarship to Lee Strasberg, and, very few people can even get that nowadays. And I was just fortunate to get all these things along the way, but I stayed curious. That is the number one thing. Keep an open mind and stay curious, because you don't know what you're going to stumble across in your next step. So
Absolutely.
I heard uh, it was I think it was a TEDx talk. I'm not sure. It was Elizabeth Gilbert on "Don't Follow Your Passion," and it was so true. It's follow your curiosity, because you don't
I
know
love it.
what's going to come up, what's going to happen. Here's what I think, and it's just so true. Change is inevitable. It's going to happen, no matter what. You can't stop it. Growth is optional. So
I
staying
love it.
curious makes you grow.
And I would imagine that some of the people that you have served in your coaching career have been uh, maybe finding themselves at a crossroads not by choice.
Oh yes.
And that's very traumatic. And
I I will tell you yes. By firsthand experience, I can tell you it can be traumatizing, and to the point where it's debilitating. And
yes,
I've been there. Personally, I have been there. I know what that's like. And when you're younger, sometimes you may not feel that you're as equipped. Everyone is equipped. It's just finding that support system and digging down deep and bringing yourself back up. And that is very difficult for some people. It's not easy, I will tell you, but seeking that kind of help, sometimes, you need, clinicians to help.
hmm
Yeah, and you might need clinicians and coaches,
right.
because I've had both. So I know, and especially it. I don't know about you, Miriam, but creatively, when we take that in, I guess like so much more in the creative fields, that we
You
go,
can
wait
take
a
it
minute,
personally.
oh gosh, we do,
Yeah,
because it's the creativity is really a personal thing.
right. It's a part of who you are. Um, yeah, and a personal rejection. I uh, I love the idea of coaching, though. I think you're absolutely right. There's a place for both the clinician, the professional counselor, getting at the emotional roadblocks and things that you may have that a coach is not, um,
Well,
necessarily the person.
here's
But
the difference. But the difference with that is that the coach is moving you forward.
yes,
The clinicians are dealing with all the past issues.
yes. And I love the idea of, first of all, a practical. I was telling you before we started that I'm kind of I really am a pretty practical person, even though I'm in a very creative field. I do I want every all these creatives out there to be making a living at what they're doing, and actually
Absolutely.
not no starving artists here, please. But
No.
um, uh, so I just we need to be practical, and I love the fact that you give action plans. Coaches give action plans. This is what I want you to do this next week. You're going to do this and this and this. Okay? Is that your assignment? Are you okay with that assignment?
Well, you're right, and we can strategize. And
Mm-hmm.
there's also a part where you come up with that stuff. I can say what I think, but
Right.
that may not sit well. So, asking those questions to get to the place of the action plan
Mm-hmm.
is best, because nobody's going to know anything better than you.
Yes.
No
I
one.
had a business coach once who would give he'd walk in the door and he'd immediately say start giving me assignments. And I was going, whoa.
Too much.
He says like by tomorrow you'll have this done, right? And I'm going, that's more than I could do in a month.
Yeah,
So
so imagine if he would have walked in and said, "So, what do you got going on today?
right.
What's going on? So where do you think, is that you might need help with?" And you probably start wondering, "Oh, and you know what? You probably would get, as practical as you are, you probably would have gotten to that list that he gave you,
Yeah,
but it would be on your time."
absolutely. Well, this has been so much fun. I love talking to you. I'm so glad that I got to meet you. And do you have
Likewise.
any parting? Oh, how do people get a hold of you? That's
Oh,
the
okay.
I
I
should
can
have
always
mentioned.
be found on LinkedIn under
Yeah.
my name, Rosalinde Rosado. I have
Okay.
my own, I operate my own company, Your Launchpad. And I came up with that name because I felt like whatever transition that you are going through, you're going to just launch. You're going to bounce off whatever it is, whether it's an idea, it's a pathway, it's like you're bouncing off, and so I'm the pad to bounce off from, and that's how I developed that name.
That's a
And
great.
yeah, so that's it. So I can be reached on LinkedIn, or my email, and that your launchpad is spelled URLANCUHPAD. So, like, kind of